The crackle of a cast iron skillet, the rich aroma of collard greens simmering, and the sweetness of cornbread fresh from the oven, these weren't just meals, they were memories. Before we begin, hit like and subscribe. Today we revisit 10 African American recipes that carried love across generations. Before refined white sugar became affordable, molasses was the sweetener of choice in many African American kitchens, and nowhere did it shine brighter than in gingerbread. Unlike the light, fluffy cakes of suburban cookbooks, this version was dense, moist, and deeply spiced. Molasses gave it a smoky sweetness layered with ginger, cloves, cinnamon, and allspice that filled the air as it baked. Often cooked in cast iron pans or well-worn metal trays, the cake carried the seasoned flavor of generations. Families made it during the fall and winter holidays, its rich aroma mingling with the smell of wood smoke or fresh coffee. Elders often recalled learning to make it without a written recipe, measuring by memory, knowing the batter was right when it hugged the spoon. Served warm with buttermilk or sliced cold the next morning, it was a treat that disappeared quickly, never lasting more than a day in most households. For many, a bite of molasses gingerbread meant comfort, tradition, and a reminder that sweetness wasn't always about sugar, it was about making the most of what you had. Few dishes stir such strong reactions as chitlins, pig, intestines, cleaned, boiled, and seasoned until tender. For some, the smell alone brings back childhood memories. For others, it recalls hardship and survival. During slavery, enslaved Africans were often given the least desirable cuts: feet, ears, tails, and intestines, and through patience they transformed them into dishes of nourishment. Preparing chitlins was a labor of love, often taking hours of scrubbing, rinsing, and slow cooking with vinegar, onions, garlic, and spices to temper the odor. Many families had a chitlin queen, the elder who alone was trusted with the task. Traditionally served on holidays or at special gatherings, chitlins became a delicacy born from deprivation, a reminder of resilience and resourcefulness. Elders recall the kitchen windows fogging, the smell clinging to clothes, and the sense of occasion when the dish finally reached the table. To eat chitlins today is more than just tasting food. It's honoring history, preserving memory, and acknowledging a painful past that families turned into something sustaining. Whether loved or disliked, chitlins remain a cultural marker connecting generations through a dish both controversial and sacred. Among the Gullah Geechee people of South Carolina and Georgia, red rice wasn't just a side dish, it was heritage on a plate. Closely related to West African jollof rice, this dish reflected the cultural bridge carried across the Atlantic. Long grain rice was sautéed in bacon fat or oil, then simmered with onions, bell peppers, garlic, and crushed tomatoes until the grains turned a deep brick red. Seasoned with thyme, cayenne, or celery seed, the rice gained bold flavor, and when available, smoked, sausage, chicken gizzards, or shrimp were added for richness. Families often prepared red rice for Sunday dinners, church gatherings, or birthdays where the tomato base symbolized blessing and prosperity. Elders used to say that if your red rice came out too dry or too mushy, you weren't paying attention. This dish demanded care and intuition. The aroma filling the house and the bright color on the table made it more than food. It was celebration and memory bound together. Even today, red rice remains a treasured dish, proof that traditions preserved quietly over centuries can still speak loudly of identity, resilience, and pride. For many black families, especially during the Depression and wartime years, chicken and dumplings were a way to stretch a single bird into a feast. A whole chicken was simmered gently with onions, celery, garlic, bay leaf, and pepper until the meat was tender enough to pull from the bone. That rich broth then became the base for dumplings. Simple dough made of flour, fat, and milk, or water rolled thin and cut into strips or rounds. Some families preferred slick dumplings flat and chewy, while others favored puffed biscuit-like ones. No matter the style, the result was the same, a steaming pot of comfort that warmed both body and spirit. This wasn't restaurant food, it was survival food, grief food, celebration food, all in one. On cold nights, the bubbling pot on the stove filled the house with a smell that meant safety and care. Children, remember the anticipation of lifting the lid and seeing dumplings float among tender chicken pieces? Chicken and dumplings were more than just hearty. They were proof that even in lean times, love could be ladled into a bowl and shared around the table. No holiday table in a black household felt complete without a sweet potato pie, and it wasn't just dessert, it was heritage. Brought over through African foodways, sweet potatoes became a southern staple, sweeter and more abundant than pumpkin. Unlike pumpkin pie, which filled white American kitchens, sweet potato pie reflected African American taste, warm, spiced, and comforting. The potatoes were roasted until their natural sugars deepened, then mashed smooth with eggs, brown sugar, vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, and sometimes a hint of citrus zest. The crust, often homemade, had to be golden and flaky, holding the custard-like filling without overshadowing it. Tradition dictated that the first slice went to the eldest, a gesture of respect and legacy. Younger generations often added marshmallows or pecans on top, but the classic version was left plain, glossy from egg wash. Many recall sneaking into the kitchen the next morning to eat a cold slice with coffee, the flavors even richer overnight. Sweet potato pie was never just food. It was memory on a plate, a matriarch's signature, and a reminder that love could be measured in spices and shared in every bite. At first glance, hoe cakes might look like simple cornmeal pancakes, but behind them lies a story of survival and ingenuity. The name itself comes from the method once used to cook them field workers. Many of them enslaved would spread the batter on the flat side of a hoe and cook it over an open flame in the fields. With nothing more than cornmeal, water, salt, and a bit of lard or bacon grease, hoe cakes provided sustenance when little else was available. As generations passed, the recipe evolved, sometimes enriched with buttermilk or eggs for a fluffier texture, but the spirit of resilience remained the same. In rural southern kitchens, hoe cakes were often paired with greens, beans, or stews used like bread to scoop up juices. Mornings began with the sizzle of batter hitting hot iron edges, crisping to golden brown, served with butter, honey, or syrup. Many elders recall how the smell filled the kitchen and how those warm cakes brought comfort at the start of a long day. Hoe cakes were never just breakfast. They were proof that with the barest of means, families could still create something warm, nourishing, and deeply rooted in tradition. This humble pairing of ham hocks and lima beans tells a story of turning scraps into sustenance. During the Jim Crow era, ham hocks, the joint between a pig's leg and foot, were often discarded by wealthier households, but in black kitchens they became prized. Smoked and simmered low and slow, a single hock could transform an entire pot of beans into something rich and hearty. Lima beans, cheap and filling, soaked up every ounce of smoky flavor, softening into a creamy texture that clung to the spoon. For many families in the 1942nd through the 1962nd, this dish was a weeknight miracle, affordable, nourishing, and satisfying enough to feed a crowd. Children remember the rhythmic bubbling from the stovetop and the savory aroma that lingered long after dinner. Leftovers were even better the next day, ladled over rice or scooped up with cornbread. Elders often said, "If you can season beans right, you'll never go hungry." Ham hocks and lima beans weren't fancy, but they carried dignity, proof that resilience and flavor could thrive even in the leanest times. Few dishes brought people together like a summertime fish fry, and fried catfish was always the star. Abundant in southern rivers and inexpensive to catch, catfish became a staple for families looking to stretch a dollar while still serving something festive. The preparation was simple, but sacred fillets soaked briefly in buttermilk to soften their flavor, dredged in seasoned cornmeal with paprika, cayenne, and garlic powder, then slipped into bubbling peanut oil. The crackle of the fryer, the smell rising into the humid air, and the sight of golden crust forming were signals that everyone's appetite would soon be satisfied. Served with Crystal or Louisiana hot sauce, a slice of white bread, and maybe coleslaw or baked beans, it was both practical and celebratory. Family reunions, church gatherings, or backyard weekends often centered around a giant tub of fish, with elders swapping stories while kids ran with paper plates in hand. Leftovers never lasted long. Cold catfish sandwiches with mustard were a prized treat the next day. Fried catfish wasn't just a meal, it was a community tradition, proof that joy could be fried, golden, and shared by hand. In African American kitchens, Hoppin John was never just beans and rice. It was a dish of symbolism, luck, and survival. With roots tracing back to West Africa and the Gullah Geechee culture of the Carolina coast, this simple mixture of black-eyed peas, rice, and pork scraps carried deep meaning. On New Year's Day, families gathered around steaming bowls of Hoppin John, with each pea representing coins, and the greens served alongside, symbolizing paper money together, promising prosperity for the year ahead. But beyond the holiday, it was an everyday dish of ingenuity. Black-eyed peas, inexpensive and easy to grow, stretched alongside rice to feed large households. A ham hock, or bits of bacon, provided richness, while onions, garlic, and bay leaves gave depth. Leftovers were transformed into Skip and Jenny the next day, proof that nothing went to waste, and frugality was itself a virtue. For many, the sound of peas simmering and the earthy aroma drifting through the house still recalls evenings of shared bowls and unspoken hope. Hoppin John wasn't about extravagance. It was about taking what little you had and turning it into nourishment, both for the body and the spirit. In countless southern kitchens, smothered pork chops were more than dinner. They were a lesson in turning little into plenty. Popularized during the Great Migration, this dish reflected the creativity of black families who knew how to stretch modest ingredients into something that felt luxurious. Thick bone-in chops were seasoned with salt, pepper, paprika, and garlic, dredged lightly in flour and fried golden in a sizzling cast iron pan. But the real magic came after onions and peppers deglazed the skillet, transforming pan drippings into a rich, velvety gravy. The chops were tucked back in, left to simmer low and slow until the meat fell off the bone. Served with white rice, mashed potatoes, or cabbage, it fed large families while carrying the taste of love and resilience. Many elders remember waiting for that first bite gravy dripping over the plate, the kind of flavor no seasoning packet could ever match. Smothered pork chops weren't just comfort food, they were proof that with patience, even scraps could be turned into soul. These 12 recipes weren't just food on a plate, they were pieces of memory, resilience, and love passed down through generations. From the savory richness of smothered pork chops to the challenging legacy of chitlins, each dish carried stories that spoke louder than words. They remind us how African American kitchens turn scraps into feasts and hardship into tradition. So which of these do you remember, or which one would you try first? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we'd love to hear your stories. And if you enjoyed this journey through flavors of the past, don't forget to like and subscribe for more nostalgic trips into America's culinary history, because some recipes are too important to be forgotten.